In a world where the wild meets the future, hunters find themselves navigating a landscape shaped by both tradition and technology. Today, we explore the delicate balance between ethical hunting and the rise of high-tech innovation. As hunters, we must ask ourselves, how do we preserve the essence of the hunt while embracing these new tools? Futuristic technology, once a distant dream, now hovers over the savannah. Drones scan every movement. AI tracks wildlife in real time. Is this the future of hunting, or is it a step too far? Jono and the Salt Lick Worldwide team tackle the tough questions, the ethics, and the future of the hunt.
Welcome to the Salt Lick Worldwide podcast. This isn't just another hunting show. We're diving deep into the wild where nothing is off limits. Each week, we confront tough questions, explore controversial topics, and push the boundaries of adventure. From adrenaline-pumping hunts and hard-hitting conservation stories to the latest gear that can change the game, we're here to stir the pot and spark debate. If you're ready to face the unfiltered truth and get your pulse racing, you're in the right place. Buckle up. The adventure starts now.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Salt Lick Worldwide podcast. And today we're doing things a little different. This is actually a joint podcast between the Salt Lick Group and the podcast Round the Fire with Kingsview Safaris. We've got Mr. Jono McHugh with us. Hey, Jono.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. We, like you and I have been talking for a couple of weeks now, trying to put this together. I'm glad we were able to finally put it together and get it on the way anyway, or get it handled, I should say. But yeah, so you posed a pretty interesting question on the Hunt South Africa group about what I think the question, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but what was the impact that AI could potentially have in the safari business? Something to that effect?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, the whole world is talking about AI at the moment. And I kind of felt like the hunting industry is one of those things that was getting left behind, or people just presume that because of the way that it is, we don't need to worry about it. And I just put it out there to the group. And the funny thing was, no one really came back with any suggestions, which really got me thinking. I was like, shit, what is the effect of AI on the hunting industry? So I thought it was quite interesting. And then you reached out and suggested we do this joint podcast. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. We can actually discuss it.
Yeah, no, sounds great. And, I've got Paul. This is actually Paul's first time on a podcast, right, Paul?
It is.
You've been on several hunts and videos and have been a member of the team forever. And then we've got Mike Saffin, who everybody's come to know and love, though he doesn't talk much until he starts drinking. So
that's why I'm drinking.
Cheers. All right. Well, yeah. So let's dive into it. Paul, I know you were researching this, a little bit. So you want to kick things off with kind of what you came up with initially?
Yeah, like you said, I'd watched a couple of or listened to a couple of your stuff on Spotify, and Sean proposed this question to me. So I AI'd what would South Africa look like, and as far as the AI was concerned, it came up with a lot of stuff about poaching, using it to help, AI and drones and poaching and everything else like that. And then I kind of bounced over to the state side, and they were looking more towards being able to track whitetails and everything else like that. So it definitely posed a positive side, and then the only thing I was and I definitely wanted your opinion on it as far as the negative side would be based off your last podcast about crappy outfitters, could a crappy outfitter use the AI to really push their volume up without the actual quality work, right, and the face-to-face communication. So that's kind of where I was at in a nutshell. I definitely wanted your feedback on all that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely something that can be used for good and bad. I jotted down just a couple of notes. I think for a lot of us, we don't quite know how far AI is going to go, but we do know that it's going to get as smart as hell. The pictures are going to get better. It's going to get better in its wording, that type of stuff. And as an outfitter myself, my inclination is already thinking guys can put up fake trophy photos, guys putting up fake references, because we know that when you book with an outfitter, one of the first things you ask them is, hey, look, send me some references. And just now, a bit of a sneaky outfitter can put together this whole list of perfectly good references that AI has done in different languages and tones and all sorts of things. And that can be pretty dangerous, especially for the guys coming to South Africa for the first time. So those are the types of things that just jumped into my head straight away.
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but I think you hit something right away. I mean, I never, like I said, I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but once you opened it up, yeah. Well, and here's the thing too. So we all know my experience with outfitters, which has not always been good and has not always been bad. I've had some very good trips, and I've had some that, well, frankly, Paul and Staffen and a couple of the other guys and I have had some shitty experiences with outfitters. But from a reference perspective, we encourage people to ask for references. But at the end of the day, the problem with references are outfitters only going to give you the 3 or 4 names that he wants you to talk to anyway. So are you really getting the right reference, or are you getting what the outfitter wants? But you're right. I mean, now, well, from an advertising perspective and everything else, there's the opportunity there to really cheat the system in a way that it wasn't meant to be. And I know, a lot that conversation comes up a lot, especially on the African hunting group sites. And it's something to kind of think about too. References. That used to be the way business was done. And if I went over and I hunted, or Paul or Mike did, and we had an excellent time and developed a relationship, it seems like automatically, that reference meant the world to everybody else. And now it's kind of lost its weight in a sense. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, hey, definitely the reference piece. We've experienced, like you said, some good times and some bad times. So, but fortunately, you've been many, many times, so you don't really have to do all that stuff. So, but coming to the AI stuff, I mean, y'all see Terminator, so we all know it's scary. So if you watch Terminator, we're all going to be screwed with the AI shit. So, but no, I don't know. I mean, it's got its. I thought about it a little bit. It's got its goods and its bads, I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have people that abuse it, obviously. But then you're going to have the good things that you can do with it too. So, I mean, I guess you just got to see where it goes and deal with it, I guess, in my opinion. You can't do nothing about it. If it's coming, it's coming. Right?
Right. No, 100%.
So just figure out a way to deal with it, adjust to it, and live with it, I guess. You're going to have all the people, the tough keyboard tough guys are always going to, give you their 2 cents and
keyword warriors.
Yeah. So, I mean, just deal with it like everything else, I guess.
Well, and I didn't go down the dark rabbit hole to begin with. I kind of started with, looking at it as a way for increasing or enhancing wildlife management from a process of, data, using cameras, using sensors, using tracking across the game preserves.
All that set,
yeah, for managing your wildlife, managing your herds. Not only that, but managing the land itself too. And you can monitor growth and rainfall, and there's all of these things that I think it can be used for that are really good. I think poaching too, AI powered surveillance systems, and especially with biometrics and everything now, that could really up the ante. If it's used responsibly. And I think we'll go back to that a lot on this podcast is, it's all great if it's used responsibly. The same way, we'd like these things to work well. There's somebody else on the other side right now thinking about how he can jack up the system and really fuck with everybody using AI. So there's 2 sides to that coin.
Yeah, I think you spot on there. That it's going to be both sides. And one of the good points that I actually brought up and thought about. Now, myself as an outfitter back in South Africa, we were down by the coast. So we were very lucky in terms of we could offer a lot of like non-hunting activities. You could go fishing, you could go to the beach, you could do some shopping. So what we did was we tried to target more the family market. Bring your kids over, we'll go hunting, the missus will take the kids to the shops, that type of stuff. But at the same time, I also marketed myself as I didn't have any hunting blinds, didn't hunt over water, like you were going to walk your ass off. You were really going to hunt. I didn't have any dangerous game. I didn't have any world record trophy horns or anything like that. And what happened was a lot of the times I mean, don't get me wrong, as a starting business, I'd book anybody with a heartbeat. But a lot of the times I'd book somebody and halfway through the hunt, I'd think, shit, like you weren't the right client for me as an outfitter for the way I hunt. And I think what a cool thing that AI can be used for is that if, let's say somebody's coming to Africa for the first time and they can put in their preferences, like I'm this age, this is my health, this is how I like to hunt. And somehow AI can figure out and being like, this is the outfitter you need to book with. I think that would be quite a cool idea.
Or at least narrow
narrow
it down drastically anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Like be like, these guys, it's shown that they tend to do a lot of blind hunting, or, it's a very rocky terrain, or they do a lot of walking, talking. Maybe that's not what you want. So there's good and bad sides to it, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's right. That's that whole, tourism experience from a safari standpoint that, AI eventually is going to be able to analyze those preferences like you discussed, both and even past experiences that you've already had, and tailor that safari for that individual specific interest rather than, just, hey, this is a new outfitter that we're going to try out kind of thing. So I think that's, based on that. And it would, I think at the end of the day, could probably really be used to enhance the overall customer experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the good things, for sure about it. And then, from there, obviously you go into the economic impact of AI and what it has the potential to do good for. And especially from an efficiency standpoint, we see it every day with new softwares, and especially on the editing side for us, AI has really, really helped us streamline everything. And in the past, we've had to do everything manually, and it takes hours and hours and hours and hours. Now there's little tools and tricks and individual editing softwares that just speed it up 10x. I'm able to pump stuff out. It used to take me several weeks to put together a 45-minute, long episode, whether it was an actual hunt or a podcast. And now, I can probably do it in an afternoon kind of thing and still maintain the quality. And it's all because of AI-driven tools now. I'm not, like from a Premiere Pro perspective, I'm not editing audio all day long to try to fix shitty audio. Now there's an AI plugin that does it all and fixes it instantly. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do. I don't know, Jono, you want to take another stab at it? What else you got?
Yeah, so it's actually funny you were bringing up, efficiency and editing things. When we had COVID and South Africa was completely locked down and effectively put my business to a halt, I kind of had to scramble around and think, fuck, what am I going to do now? And hence me starting the podcast. That was one of the things. But the other was, I've always had this ability where I've been pretty good at writing. I hated school. I was more interested in sports and chasing chicks around and things like that. But I had this ability to write. And I signed up with a website called Upwork, which is all like freelancing work and everything. And I put out there that I would write articles from a hunting and firearm perspective. And a lot of guys, what they do is they'll pay you like $50, $100 for an article, and you're basically a ghost writer. And they'll take that article and they'll put it on their website or their blog or whatever it is. And that was okay. I was doing pretty good and writing probably 10, 15 articles a week, all on hunting and firearms. And then when AI came, it just went, really? It just stopped. Like everybody, no one was interested. No one wanted to pay a freelancer or a copywriter. And one of the websites I was writing for, I went back and I read their stuff. And you could see that AI was kind of getting the point, but it didn't have that, like, what it really feels like to hunt. It didn't have the expressive ways about it. And so it was kind of getting there, but not there yet. And then I went to that same website a couple months later and I read those same articles and I thought, shit, this thing is evolving quickly. Yeah. And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's scary. If you look at all the AI tools that are available now to content creators, especially, it seems like every week there's something new. Yeah. In the old days, we would have to learn a software like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop to actually come up with unique and driving thumbnails. Now there's fucking AI that you type in the prompts you want and it spits you out a thumbnail that's as good or better than you could come up with. I mean, you could actually give it the entire transcript from a podcast episode and it will generate something that's going to pop, and you tell it, hey, I want it edgy or I want it clickbaity, and it, like 9 times out of 10, it nails it. Maybe not the first try. You may have to play with it a little bit, but it's as good, I think, as a human already, if not better in some ways. Certainly more efficient.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, and then with AI, right? So one of the issues you're going to have to deal with in using AI is we got to talk about ethical hunting, right, and fair chase, because AI has the ability to give the hunter an unfair advantage also.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And the big question is, who's controlling the AI? That's always one that people ask. So let's say, for example, if it's somebody that's very anti-hunting and you want to put in just a general question into AI about hunting, and all of a sudden you're just fed this absolute BS about how bad hunting is and captive bred this and captive bred that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, guess hunting's bad then.
Right. Yeah. If it leverages its own opinion, it can.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It could definitely go that right too.
To be honest, I was kind of pleasantly surprised when I did the research. I expected that, to be honest. I expected it all to be already negative. And like I said, I mentioned, it was, it went over prices, and it definitely went over about hunting and poaches. So at this point, I'd segue that it has been positive so far. But yeah, I can definitely see this all who controls the algorithms behind it to see how
it's because the man hasn't taken over yet.
The Terminator hasn't reached full effect.
The man hasn't taken that shit over yet.
Well, and I was looking at it from, we've got, AI is, we've got smart scopes now, we've got drones, we've got tracking apps, they're all good, but they can also be used for bad too. And that's the thing. I think at the end of the day, ethics still boils down to that specific individual and whether or not he or she has a fully functional moral compass and, and was raised the right way. And if not, then it can be used for bad. Just the same way we talk about it can be used for anti-poaching. It could just as easily be used to help poachers and help poachers get away with things too. So there's that's that double-edged sword right there.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
You got everybody's opinion there. So, I mean, if you're going to use drones, if you're going to use stuff to hunt animals and stuff like that, no different than using a dog, right? I mean, what's the difference? So explain the difference between using a dog to hunt animals or a drone.
Well, I mean, a dog, I think, well, here's the deal. A dog is limited to a certain area on the ground. A drone is almost, they've got drones now with 360 cameras on that have radiuses of several miles, and with thermal imaging the way it is now too, dog's old school, and that's okay. A drone is 100 times more efficient than a dog could be. Look at in the States now, they're using drones for deer recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing now.
They did an episode in South Africa or somewhere in Africa where they did it.
Yeah. So that's, and to me, that's something that's good, right? That's, you want to recover that animal. So that's one thing it can be used for good. That's, a different asshole that picks up that drone though is going to use it to target and locate animals and put themselves in a position to, is that ethical? Locating animals with a drone and, or pushing animals with a drone? Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's, from an ethical perspective, and especially when we talk about fair chase, you've crossed the line there. That's no longer fair chase, I think. Especially the traditional spot and stalk African style hunting doesn't involve drones. It doesn't involve thermals. If you want the true, traditional experience, ethically, you need to do it a certain way. And I think it's going to...
You're going to have the people who say, hey, you're using a dog to chase a cat up a tree. Right? I mean, so it's like, where do you draw the line? I mean, it's no different than using a dog. So,
well, I mean, we use dogs in the States, right? So we use dogs to bear hunt, and we use dogs to coon hunt, and they use
hunt. I mean, use dogs to do everything.
Sure.
So hog hunt.
Does that make it? I don't know. I mean, that's
a good question. I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, you're just using another high tech piece of equipment instead of a dog.
Except he's not high tech at all. He's low tech.
About the drone.
Yeah, I'm talking about the dog. I don't know. Jono, what do you think about that? He raises a good point.
Yeah, look, I mean, these are the questions that I think people have been asking since the beginning of time. Since that first guy tried to use a spear and then some caveman asshole came with a bow and he was like, well, that's not very fair. And then what the scopes are capable of now, the guys with the apps putting in the windage, popping animals at 1,000 yards.
We're guilty.
Thermals.
All three of us here are guilty.
Yeah, and you know what? I wish I could too. But that's the thing. Like, where does the draw lines? And I think a lot of it comes down to just personal preference. And I think people need to, excuse my language, but I think people need to grow the fuck up too and be like, if that's what you want to do, good. But then don't call your hunt a true traditional hunt. when you use the drone to bring it towards you and you shot it that way. And it's actually a podcast that I'm working on. It's been one of my biggest gripes with a lot of the record books guys is, somebody shoots I think you can get now like a 70-inch kudu or something ridiculous.
I saw somebody posted one on, I believe it was Hunting the Dark Continent this morning, taped out, I want to say 71 2/8.
Was it real or AI generated?
No, see? See, I underestimated your sneakiness right there.
But at the end of the day, this is going to boil back down to the dollar. You know what I mean? If you want to shoot a 70-inch kudu, what's it cost? 100 grand? 50 grand? I mean, not everybody's going to do that. So, I mean, it's going to boil down to the dollar. So if you want good shit, you want to use good shit, you got to spend the money, right? I mean, if you can't afford to do it that way, then, that's the way you got to go. So just continue to do it your way. There's nothing wrong with it, So
I think there can be something wrong with it. John, I'm sorry I interrupted. I know you were on key next. Go ahead. You have thought there.
No, I was just going to say with those types of things, if you, with the record book guys, if you do end up shooting that 70-odd kudu-inch bull and you end up in the record books, that's all very well, but then don't go strutting around like you stalked it for 4 or 5 days and, it was such a hard hunt. You walked into a camp where that thing was behind a high fence and you shot it.
They opened
Happy
up
days.
the front gate, shot it.
Yeah, I'm proud for you. Well done. So I think that's what happens is people need to say, this is what it is, that is what it is, and that is what it is. Because people are often too keen to do it all, but they want like something that's going to help them over here and something that's going to help them over here. But then when somebody asks them, they tend to leave out those details. That, I shot it off the back of a truck, or I had this guy do it to me, or had them run towards me type of thing. So people need to grow up and say, I did it this way. And if they do that, we can say, cool, well done, man, all good. Just like if that guy comes and he shoots a 42-inch kudu bull in the Eastern Cape. Now, I know if you're in the Karoo Mountains, you probably were after that thing for about 5 or 6 days. And you put that online and someone's going to hammer you because he didn't have the right inches, but they don't know that you've still got scars on your elbows and knees from crawling after that thing to get into position. Like, that is what it is. You got to say, well done to the guy, man. You worked your ass off. And too often we're too busy bashing each other and saying this isn't ethical and that's not ethical, as opposed to saying, do whatever, blows your hair back, but don't tell me what's right or wrong.
Right.
Well, and
that's it.
This is honestly, so Mike and I had a conversation with Doug Cocroft from Splitting Image.
Yeah.
And in that podcast, which we're going to release it shortly, the entirety of it, we talked about that, in that, the social media drives people to do stupid shit, and they're out there for instant gratification. They're out there for that slap on the ass and that, that thumbs up, right? People crave that.
Yeah.
But you're right. You don't get the whole story, right? But that goes back to the just being transparent about it. If you're not afraid to post it online, then just tell the fucking truth about it, right? It is what it is. Listen, you're going to get shamed no matter what, and that goes back to
shit regardless. So
right, and that's what goes back. And you kind of brushed on this briefly, and this is slightly off topic, but I'll bring it up because it did come up with Doug. We're in an industry now, in the hunting industry, where I'm really seeing a lot of shaming and a lot of dirty shit going on within the industry between fellow hunters, and I fucking hate it. I was guilty of it for a little bit too, in that the crossbow thing. So I was anti-crossbow during traditional. I felt like every state should have a traditional, bow season. And then there's a lot of states that opened up crossbow the same time as traditional. And I thought it was an unfair advantage. I changed my thought on that and realized, you know what, we need to get as many people involved as we possibly could. But I think there's so much shaming that comes from within the industry. It's hunter bashing another hunter. Bow hunters don't like crossbow hunters. Rifle hunters, hate bow hunters. On and on and on. And it's not just limited to whitetail; it goes on everywhere. And now there's women in the industry too. Which 2 decades ago there was very few, and now we're seeing it's not 50-50, but there's a lot of women that are getting into the industry. Not all of those women are there for the right reasons. I will fucking tell you right now, if you have to show your tits and ass and call yourself a hunter or a fisherman, you're not doing it the right way. Right? That's you're shopping for likes, or you're fishing for likes. You're not actually out there because you're passionate about the sport. The women that are out there doing it and putting in the time and working hard at it, congrats to them. Thumbs up. Absolutely 100%. those other chicks that are just out there showing their ass, or, I see these outdoor channels where a chick's mowing the lawn in a fucking bikini and it's an outdoor channel but for hunting and fishing. No, it's not. You're showing your ass. What you're doing.
Yeah, I think the hunting industry has lost social media. We all know that. After Cecil, we could see just how we were against the flow of social media. They completely had it locked down. And I think hunting has done a very good job in clawing that back, podcasts like this, with what you guys are doing and putting out, with guys like Dylan Love and PH Journals. He's doing a cool job getting the word out there. Hunting is slowly clawing it back. And then you get some fuckwit that does something bad that just throws it all backwards and we've got to start again. Or you'll get, I think there was that video of that one girl who, I can't remember her name, I wouldn't even say it, that hunted blue wildebeest in a bikini. She wanted to be the first person to hunt in Africa in a bikini. And I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at the outfitters. I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Why? You're just going to get backlash. You're just putting it in a bad name. I think Parza came out and try to reprimand them and type of stuff. But you're like, why are you handing this type of stuff to people on a plate? It makes no sense. Especially since guys have done such a great, and you guys will know in South Africa, those PHs and outfitters, the good guys, man, they work their butts off to make a good reputable industry out there. And they're doing a fantastic job. John X, those guys, what they're doing with their social media and the videos is fantastic. And that's the types of people we need more of. It's a shame that a lot of these influencers, like you said, they get the attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can, and it doesn't all shed a good light on the hunting industry either. That's the problem, and sometimes it creates too much controversy. Listen, I think controversy is a good thing. I'm not going to sway away from it. I want to tackle these issues just like what we're talking about today. But I think there's a way to do it. And like for me, going back, if you got to show your ass to do it, literally show your ass or hang out in a bikini, I think there's a better way to handle that. And frankly, who the fuck's going to take you seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. My wife, we often have this conversation, and I'll admit it, she's a much better hunter than I am. She's an absolute badass. Whenever I had a client that wounded an animal, I'd always say, because she's a short, tiny, petite little woman, I'd say, babe, this is the tracks. I left a piece of tissue paper, like on a tree. We got to go after this animal because the client's got 2 days left. Like, please go see if you can find that warthog or whatever. And I'd come back and she would have tracked that thing down and shot it. And she grew up on a farm, barefoot, out hunting baboons, all that type of stuff. And I'm like, please, can you open a YouTube channel? Please, can you do an Instagram? Like, you are what we need. But the modest female hunter is like, I don't want that. I want to just hunt and carry on. And that's the problem. The good people, they don't want the recognition. They don't want people to know who they are. They just want to go out and hunt and enjoy it. I've had a couple of female hunters on my podcast that are incredible women. And you're like, you guys are doing an amazing job. You're the ones that should have 50, 60,000 followers. Not Hunter Barbie out there.
Well, and you're exactly right. And what I try to do in scheduling and kind of vetting people, for future episodes is I research them on social media, and I like to find up and coming people in the industry, right? Somebody that doesn't already have name recognition, but you can see that they're down there in the trenches. They're doing the hard work and putting that out there. And there are
a lot of those.
Sure. Women, men, there's a lot of people out there. And those are the people I want to talk to, right? Because that's that next generation that's coming up. And, if we can get them out there, especially if they're doing it the right way, that's the thing. If they're doing it the right way and they're not cheating, they're not skipping steps, they're not, blowing through a red light. That's the kind of people that I want to have on the show and I want to talk to. And I've got a list of several dozen, that we put together that we're trying to get. But to your point, a lot of them don't. Well, yes, they have a social media presence. They're apprehensive about coming on and talking about it, though. They, while it's okay to do a little bit, they're not so sure they're ready to step it up to especially the video side of things yet and put it out there to a broader audience. And I think they should, especially a lot of them carry a really good message and they have really cool stories behind them. And but yeah, we're working on them though. We'll get a bunch more. I think we've already got a bunch.
We've actually had a couple really good ones.
Yeah. Yet to hear. Well, a good one was Sarah Ripley Forsyth. We had her on a couple of weeks ago. We shot with her. That's going to be released also. But she is fantastic, and she really uses social media. Even though she owns, they own a hotel and they own a game farm, and she is licensed PH now. Her content isn't so much about hunting. It's about conservation and the the game
Her
breeding
way of
side of
life.
it.
Her way of
Yeah,
life is what this.
and it's just a really unique take on it. You don't see, yes, well, there'll be a dead animal. Sometimes it's, something drowned in the dam kind of thing, and they got to pull it back. I don't think there's any, there's no kill shots on there. There's no anything. She just does it in a different way and tries to teach people and educate people about the conservation side of things. And she is super passionate too. Like, she'll show her ass in a hurry if she doesn't like something. She is not afraid to stir the pot. Very pro, pro South African, pro hunting. Has a huge problem with the greenies when they start bitching about culling and the other conservation practices that are proven to work, right? But anyway, we totally went down a fucking rabbit hole right there, and we are off the topic. So I've got to, Paul, that's your job. You got to reel my ass back in when we start doing that shit.
That's the challenge that I have right there. I need more beer.
Right. So the other thing is, and I think we've hit on a couple of good ones. I think AI. Let's go down this rabbit hole for a second with AI. So whether it's used for good or bad, it's going to spark some legal and regulatory changes, right? It has to.
Yeah, definitely. It's coming. I'm not smart enough to know what it is or how far this whole thing's going to go. I know, South Africa's most famous billionaire, old Muskie, he kind of got into it and then put his foot on the brake and was like, whoa, guys, this is getting a little bit out of hand. So for someone at that level to be a bit aware as where things are going, all I know is the hunting industry better sort of be prepared in some way, because it's gonna make changes. It really will. As pure as hunting is getting out into the bush and wildlife, which is a simpler thing you can get, it's still going to change it in a way. And I hope those guys that really mean well in the industry can try and get ahead of that, because it's going to be important.
Right. That's my fear. Is if we don't get ahead of it as hunters and conservationists, that someone who's never picked up a gun or is scared of guns is going to start making laws like you see in certain states where, it's just totally against the hunting part and totally for the AI, whether they be good or bad, So, yeah.
Yeah. And what's to say with the developments of AI? Let's say it gets to that point where they're making videos where you can't even tell if it's real or not.
Sure.
That some purple-haired Peter freak puts together a video of some guy just shooting a lion in the back of the head maliciously and gruesomely and painting it completely like this. That goes viral, and all of a sudden governments freak out and they're closing hunting and bringing all these stupid policies. That's a real danger that I'm worried about.
Well, and you saw what happened with Cecil, right? I mean, it just takes, and frankly, that, and there's a lot more bad shit that goes on than just that, right? That one just happened to get attention. And apparently my research seemed to indicate like everything was above board, and it was done legally though. But I've got videos on my phone of some skeevy shit that should have never happened. But that's the thing. Technology made it so every single person in the world has a video camera on them at all times now. So sooner or later, that shit's getting out, right? And FOSA, they know about this stuff, right? There's shit out there, and there's active investigations and all that stuff. And it paints a bad image of that industry, right? Those practices that go on. But that's just, that's a small portion of it. So the people that are doing the good, and fighting the good fight and trying to do everything the right way for years and years and years, they've done everything they possibly can to entice or to promote ethical hunting, right? And free chase hunting or fair chase hunting. And now, they work 10 years, and then one of these viral videos comes out and everything they work for is shit. Even if they didn't have anything to do with it, they just threw 10 years of their life away because we just regressed 10 years in a matter of, 10 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you guys are well aware of this being to South Africa, and I can kind of put the question back to you, but how far and influential does the US dollar go in Africa? Like, it's powerful. It's extremely powerful. And I think that is probably our biggest tool. And guys that have a bad experience with a bad outfitter, by all means, call them out. Put it on the forums, put it on Facebook. You need to rat those guys out. But at the same time, if you are having a great experience, if you have seen the actual benefits of hunting, put that out too. Go to the shows, go to communities and be like, guys, you need to get to Africa because this is an incredible experience. $4,000, $5,000, you'll be amazed at how far it'll go. And I think that's where our power lies in, is that if you keep putting that money in there, the good guys get it and they turn that into real positive areas. Because some of the places that they've got in South Africa are wildlife meccas. They really are. And they need to be protected. And hunting really is the only way. So if we keep getting bashed on social media, it's going to suck. But we need to make sure that it doesn't turn hunters against the hunting in Africa. We need the other guys to say, like, don't listen to that. These are the guys you need to go with. It does some good.
Or give all the anti-hunters more fuel. So, I mean,
yeah,
and that's that's another good point. We preach to people. We try to get people to we encourage people to go to South Africa, and we try to back it up with facts. So, when I tell somebody they can go to Africa and have a 7-day hunt where I can guarantee, they're going to bag 3, 4, 5 animals, for we'll call it $7,000 kind of thing, versus going on an elk hunt out west for 7 days and you may not see an elk. I mean, there's some value in that, and I get it. People are always, not always, but a lot of times people are really apprehensive about taking that jump and making that leap and going overseas. But Africa is safe. South Africa is safe. Especially if you go with reputable people, you're not going to be taken advantage of. You're going to have the time of your life, but it's up to us as conservationists and stewards for this industry to educate people and show them, hey, this is out there. And now I'm not saying you should never whitetail hunt again or you should never elk hunt again. You need to do it now. And the thing is, if this election goes sideways in November, that could be detrimental to South Africa's economy. I think, Paul, you and I had that conversation on the way back from the airport today.
It's going to be detrimental to everybody's fucking economy.
Yeah. So, but I mean, Paul and I had that conversation on the way back from the airport today. Like, I don't think people understand, how much influence the American dollar has on the South African economy. And the giant percentage of your GDP from South Africa that's based on safari dollars, both photographic and hunting safari. Though hunting safari, I think, contributes like 73% of that overall budget. Photographic safaris are very minimal, but those are huge numbers. And it's not just that; it's firearms manufacturers and ammo manufacturers, and it's the trickle, all the other things down the road, the camo manufacturers, the booking agents. I mean, it affects a lot of people, and if shit goes sideways, like, once again, Paul and I talked about it today, at 7.5%, 8.5% at your base interest rate now, who the fuck's got money left over? You can't go afford to buy a home right now. If you do, you're paying out the ass for it. So those people that used to have disposable income, that ship has sailed. I mean, you can't hardly do it anymore. So I'm fearful that shit goes sideways in November and it doesn't go our way. For me, listen, Trump fixed it before and he can absolutely do it again. And I just hope that, we can, come together as a nation and say, okay, we've tried it this way and it doesn't work. Let's go back and try something that's got a proven track record of working. Even though you may not like the man's politics or his social media presence, I should say, it's better than the alternative. I mean, we've had a mannequin for 4 years now. Can't walk up. He still hasn't figured out how to negotiate stairs yet.
Yeah, I must admit, since moving to the States, your guys' politics is definitely it's one way or the other, and I've been so amazed at just how it really is. It's this side or it's that side. And a couple of people have asked me my opinions on politics here in America, and I always reply with like, "Dude, I'm trying to stay up with African politics. Like that's a whole other story." With what's happening in South Africa and the past. Okay, now we're getting stable with our
ANC lost a big foothold there finally for the first time since 94-ish.
Yeah, they have. I've actually, for a good couple of years, even when I was in South Africa, I always called for we need more regulation in South Africa. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm a big one for anti-government. I don't think they should be involved in anything. But the way that hunting is set up in South Africa at the moment, there is so very little regulation that it leaves a lot of manipulation. People can just come in there, they can exploit it, they can do the rules, and it has a bad effect on it. I mean, you guys will know, just to become a PH, you just have to do a little 10-day course, and all of a sudden, like, that's it. You can take people hunting, you can lead them all over the place. That type of stuff's dangerous. We need, for an example, so in the Eastern Cape, where I'm from, a lot of sheep, a lot of cattle farming down there, we got big problems with leopards. Guys don't even realize it, but you cannot hunt a leopard down in the Eastern Cape because they just say, no, you can't do it. And a lot of the bigger guys have come to the government and they've said, give us one permit, just one permit for a leopard. We'll sell it to some rich Texan for like $50,000 because he'll be the first guy to have a Cape leopard, which no one else has got. And you can have all that money. You can have all the money, do all the research, put together a quota system, do something. But we need that. We need those like policies and regulation in place because at the moment, some poor goat farmer, his animals are getting absolutely hammered by the leopards. And his farm is in the middle of nowhere. He's just looking around and saying, fuck this thing. I'm going to shoot it, dig a hole, bury it, and that's it. No one will ever know about it. So the guys are saying we need more sort of involvement from your side in terms of allowing us to do these things a bit better. And I think what to touch back on your point in terms of come November, especially with Trump's son, Don Jr., being in the hunting circles, knowing what he knows, I think he can have some sort of influence over that. I'm not too sure. But if it goes the other way, then we can forget about it. They'll bring import bans. They'll start to pressure African countries. If you don't close hunting, you can't trade with us, all this nonsense. So it really is pivotal, as you're saying, across the whole world. But yeah, I hope Trump kicks their ass. Really.
Yeah. I think that's a unanimous decision on this podcast anyway. We're all voting the same way. But yeah, you made the point of the leopards. That's still a thing too. I was in both KwaZulu-Natal and Louis Trihart this year for about a week and a half each, and I saw more leopard sign and actually saw a leopard in Louis Trihart. And like, there's no permits, there's nothing being issued. You can't. That's horseshit. I can tell you that leopards are a problem, and
they're everywhere.
It's a real thing.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, but
that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. Why not capitalize on that and use that money for research and come up with a quota system and, only issue so many permits? It's so different than, if you're hunting an Orby or a Sooney or something. Orby is a really difficult permit to get. I was fortunate it only took me a year to get one, but I've known guys that have waited 3, 4, 5 years, to get an opportunity at a permit. Doing something like that with it, make it exclusive and make it difficult, make it a little bit expensive. That's not for everybody, right? That it shouldn't be for everybody. That should not be an affordable hunt. That should be a very targeted audience for that. But, it make it cost prohibitive for people. And then all of a sudden you increase the value of that animal too.
Yeah, definitely. An example, I had a beautiful concession down in the Eastern Cape along the coast, and the owners there did an incredible job of bringing the Bontebok in. And there was numbers everywhere. They absolutely flourished. And the problem was that you cannot import them into the States. So the landowner would phone me and say, Jono, have you got clients that would shoot a Bontebok? And I said, yeah, everyone would, but they can't export it back to the States, so no one really wants it. And also the price is, I think it was like $1,200, $1,500 for a Bontebok. Whereas they could shoot a blessed buck for $300, looks pretty much the same thing, and take it back to the States. So he said to me, well, in that case, I'm just going to have to cull a whole load of them. Like, I've got no use for them. There's too many numbers. They're overgrazing the place. I'm just going to have to dig a big hole, cull them, and put it in. And that's a sign that too much over-regulation, which is funny because I was calling for a little bit more regulation, but too much over-regulation can just kill a species. And that's the type of stuff that the leftists are going to bring in come November if they get the chance. They'll just shut all the stuff down without even thinking about it.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the issues we have with import export here is based on what our Department of Agriculture and Fish and Game think are endangered species, right? I use the air quote. But they don't have boots on the ground. They don't see them. I've wanted to hunt a Bonabuck for 10 years, at least 10 years. It was there. He's definitely more unique. I think he's a prettier version of a blessed buck. The horn's not as big. That's fine. But the face, everything, I think he's just really pretty. And for 10 years, I've wanted to hunt one, but couldn't. Well, guess what? I can finally import him back as of this year. So the first thing I did when I got there is I hunted a Bonabuck.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, those things can be changed. And that's part of the, how AI can come into the stack of paperwork for that Bonabuck, because the entire herd has to be certified that it's genetically pure, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, AI can do a lot for, streamlining that process and helping it out on that side. So that's another way that it can be used for good too. But like the stack of paperwork was like that for me to hunt a bonnet buck and be able to export it. And then even after that, so that paperwork submitted, I've got several dozen pieces of paper still that I have to fill out to give the splitting image so they can apply for the remainder of the permits just so I can bring the thing home. But at least it's doable now, where a year ago it was not. Now it is.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We need those types of things because that's the whole system. That's how it works. Without those dollars, South African citizens alone will not be able to generate the type of income, the type of capital that overseas clients do come in. And it's an example is, I know that you guys have done a previous episode on CBL and the captive bred lying industry and everything like that. And this whole notion after Cecil, when everyone tried to shut down hunting and you couldn't import them to the States and you couldn't import them there, people didn't realize that the Chinese and the Russian hunters were coming in and they've been hunting lion flat out. There's been more lion exported that way than ever because now the prices have come down, they're more available. So what they've done is they've actually created a whole other market where more lion are being hunted because of it. So it's very counterintuitive. So they have to find this right balance. And I think the only way they're going to do that is from actually speaking to the guys on the ground, like the guys with the leopard, like the guys with the bontebok, and being like, you need to open these numbers up. We have to have some sort of input in. And I think AI is something that could really help with that. Get all the numbers together, get all the data together and be like, yeah, there it is. You cannot dispute this. We need to open up these permits and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I've been a proponent about that for years. And I think listen, you've got, what is it now back in South Africa, there's new head of Department of Interior and Department of Agriculture now. And like, from what I understand, like that's a really good thing. And they're already making strides in the right direction. So I feel like in the coming years, your government is not, is going to change a lot, or, your old government anyway. I think it's actually doing some good. We'll see. Obviously this term will decide, but I think already, things are moving in the right direction. And then, like everything else, these things take time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And I'd actually love to get your guys' opinions on this because a lot of people view the high fence hunting in South Africa as high fence, it's easy. But the way that I've always said is that high fence is literally the barrier between people that are in sheer poverty, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, and it's the only thing stopping them getting in there and just decimating that wildlife. And I don't know if you guys noticed with the high fence hunting, if it was that much easier or if you actually saw the true value behind it.
No, I mean, we actually did an episode that's going to air about high fence hunting. So there's, in the States, there's this, Paul and I actually talked about this again today. There's this persona of high fence hunting from hunters in the U.S. You've got these high fence ranches that, will fence off 200, 250 acres of high fence. And it kind of feels super can when you go and do those hunts. We do our best to explain to everybody, listen, with the exception of some of the free range stuff, especially in the Cape, every place there has got a high fence around it. That's not for the animals. That's more to keep people out than anything. And, like Doug said, on the podcast, good fences make good neighbors. That's why. And frankly, these animals don't give a shit about a high fence. We all have the bug when it comes to free range kudu. So we will stop what we're doing and haul ass and chase free range kudu, especially in the Cape, any day of the week. I get more jacked up about a 50-inch Cape kudu than I do a 60-inch, Greater Southern. It's so much harder in the work that goes into it. And we've been fortunate in the past couple of years where we've harvested, I think, Paul, you were in excess of 50. Mike, your daughter was a 52 or 53. Uncle Dan shot a 55. Just monster free range kudu in the Cape. And we love it. So like every time I go, like kudu's always on my list and free range. And, you guys have got a great free range fallow deer population, which we love to chase too. And I did a free range in Yala this year. Obviously, all the tiny 10 are free range. Your common reed buck, but going back, yes, I can talk about that shit all day. I absolutely love it. I'd sooner free range hunt. But Paul, okay, let's have Paul. We're going to throw this question to you because this was your first year, right? And you brought this question up today. So give us your thoughts on that and perception versus reality in the field.
Well, like you said, it definitely separates good neighbors, but you're not looking at, and I'm going to have to use state size measurements, a 50 acre plot where you can see from one high fence to the other, and all the way around, right? These, in fact, when you were, the kudu we were stalking, we watched him jump a high fence, like it was nobody's business. He just looked at it and went on about his business, and yeah, it didn't slow him down or anything. So yeah, you're not looking at, where we mentioned earlier, 1,000 range shot. I can shoot from one high fence to the other high fence. You still have miles and miles. And over there where we run that particular day, we were going up and down mountains and things of that nature. So yeah, it's a very, very different concept of, again, 50 acres versus 5,000 acres. And they may all both be high fence, but they're nowhere near the same hunt whatsoever,
Well, and Mike, maybe you can jump in here. So, you took your daughter last year for the first time, and fortunately I got to be behind the camera, which was awesome for me. But people think it's easy. How many spot and stalks get blown up versus the success ratio? Talk about that a little bit, Mike.
Well, especially on the Mr. White Donkey. Yeah, we
the pajama donkey.
Yeah, the pajama donkey. We chased hers for like 7 days or 4 or 5 days at least before we even got a good opportunity at that. But yeah, there's no, and last year was my first year, and then this year was we kind of changed things up a little bit. I saw some different things like fence wise that I didn't get to see the first year, and then we've had a conversation about the fences, and in my opinion, it doesn't matter what animal it is. If they want to get to that fence, you're going to get to that fence. Whether it's 6 foot high or 4 foot high, it doesn't matter. But no, I mean, when it comes to the fence thing, I just, I didn't see a lot of fences. And if you do, it's like you said, it was poachers, and, it's more of a security measure, right? So, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to the fences, I didn't see a bunch of fences, and it didn't matter with these animals, so they didn't get 2 shits about it. So, and you can't see, like Paul just said, you can't look across the field and see another fence over there. So, you're talking hundreds of thousands of acres. It's just all free range stuff. So, but going back, there also is places that do have fences. So, but there again, those are the people who, I mean, I don't know how you can say it. You get to the conversation about open up a gate and shoot. There are people who like to do that. All right, I'm not that guy, and I know none of you probably are. So, I mean, I like the free range. I like the open country, and I personally don't like fences. So,
but no, tell me, those animals in that perceived high fence, Paul, are those not the wildest animals you've ever seen in your damn life?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You mean hundred thousands of acres of high fence?
All right, yeah. It looked like the old Mutual Wild Kingdom was riding through there. There's animals scattering everywhere, like Mach 90, So yeah, there's nothing tame
it's
about it.
It's not as easy as everybody thinks. Put it that way.
Right.
I mean, there is some places that probably you could just go out and say, I'm just do this right here now. But then there's a lot of places that, hey, 6-7 days. You're chasing kudu for, 3, 4, 5 days. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, my perception has certainly changed, and I've been, I don't even know what number safari I'm on right now, but it's nearing 20 or 20 plus. I mean, it was in the dozens last year, and then I just keep going and going and going. But, for me, it's not even a concern anymore. I mean, like I said, I like the challenge of free range. It can be equally challenging in a high fence. And like I said, with kudu, Paul saw it, I hunted with Paul a little bit, and we would watch kudu come out of the mountains, jump over a high fence into a pivot. I'm talking about a 3-meter high fence, just overdone. Like, those fences don't stop those animals. No. They're more for keeping people out than keeping those animals in, an eland will go through it, and then y'all will go under it, a warthog will go under it. I mean, a springbuck, maybe not, a field fence will keep him in, but the majority of those animals, if they want out, they're gone. And especially during the rut, you've got a farmer that's got a bunch of, high-end kudu stuff. Think about that. The rut comes in and he's brought in all these high-end kudu, 55 plus inch, Cape kudu. The rut happens and the farm next to him is just loaded with females. Those fucking males are going over that fence. They ain't staying. They're going to where those females are. And that's that's the reality of it.
It is. And it kind of also brings into the point, when they say trust your pH, like Trust your pH. If he says shoot, shoot. And I get it. Some guys would be a little bit hesitant because they're like, am I just being pushed into shooting a high value animal here or what? But I'm sure you guys all have known multiple times. You develop that relationship with your pH. Like, you know, this guy's got my back. And for the time is when I've had some clients that maybe they're 2 or 3 times, or even a first time client, and we're going through a concession and I see an animal and I'm like, shoot it. The reason I'm saying shoot it is not because it's a big animal that you have to shoot here. It's because I have had 4 or 5 hunters on that animal and he's evaded them all. And usually he's in some bottom valley and we just so happen to be here in this open spot where you can get him. Like PHs and outfitters, they know their animals, they know their areas. And people might think, oh, that's a bad thing. But you spend so much time out there. These animals don't have fucking wings and flying all over the place and come and go. They stay in habitats. They have their territories. Like, you know, that animal, this is the best chance you're going to get. So take it. And I think a lot of the guys coming out only really understand after their first trip just how important it is to have that relationship with your pH. Because you can make it a very good trip.
And it may take several before they actually pick that up too. And that's the thing. So that's what we take several groups every year now. So we did, I don't know, this year, I think we did 4 or 5 groups. Next year, we're doing 4 or 5 groups. Year before, did 3 or 4. What I tell everybody, I meet with everybody stateside first, especially the first timers. And I always tell them, if you have to rely on your pH because you're not going to know shit about these animals. I don't care how many times you look at your perfect shot book, you're still not going to know what these animals are. You need time in the field to trust your pH. But I'm going to tell you something. If your pH says, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, you need to fucking listen to him because you may never get another chance at a quality animal like that. Now, I'm not saying if you've got a $7,000 budget and he says, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, there's a 49-inch sable, shoot the fucking thing. Within reason. If you're on a black wildebeest and he's been chasing, he knows there's a stud of a gold medal blue over there, and he finally happens to be in a position to get you on it, take the opportunity and do it. You'll thank it. Trust me, you'll thank him later.
Yeah, I've actually got a funny story. My one client, he won't mind me saying, Dave, love you to bits, Dave. I'm sure he's listening to this one. But we were hunting in an area and the light was starting to fade, and out stepped this ginormous warthog. I mean, just absolutely massive. And I started shaking. And I set out the sticks and I said, Dave, shoot that warthog. And he's looking through the scope. Can't see it. I'm like, please, Dave, shoot this warthog. It's got like 2 more steps and it's in the bushes and it's gone. And he's like, I can't see it. I fucking grabbed him physically and manipulated his body and put it in front of it. And I said, you see that brown rock? And he's like, yes. I said, shoot the rock. And he shot the rock. And afterwards, I said to him, I was like, Dave, I'm sorry. I was like a bit aggressive with you there. I had to physically put you into place. And he's like, and when he saw the warthog, he said, thank you so much. I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't know how big it was, but when we got it, and I promise you, I was shaking afterwards because for me, that's where I used to get my thrill as a PH, was getting these guys onto their amazing animals, that they don't know how special they were, but I knew how special they were. Right. And I think that's often the difference between a good PH. They really want you to have a good trip.
Yeah, and I mean, the more successful you are, the better chance they're going to come back too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make that experience, make it a once in a lifetime. That doesn't have to be a once in a lifetime. Show them the best time they've ever had, and you're going to end up with a client for life more than likely. And to segue off that, since we're on the topic, and I know the premise of the podcast was AI, but let's dive in a little bit about that, because that comes up a lot too. So as a PH, you're responsible to make sure your client has a good time, right? And to take care of them and to put them on good animals. And where is the line drawn between outfitter and PH in that? Is it more important for the outfitter? How the hell do I word this? I ran into a situation where there are, and it's happened a couple times now, where the outfitter feels like you're his client because you've hunted with him a couple times. I feel like once I develop a bond with my PH, that's where my loyalty lies, because I'm spending nearly every waking second with him, or her when I'm on safari. So my loyalties have a tendency to lie more so with my PH than the outfitter. but once again, that's muddy waters, right? Because as a PH, your job is to sell the brand as well. So where do you draw the line there? Is your, as a hunter, coming from the outside, coming from the States, does your loyalty lie with the outfitter, or should it lie with the PH, or is there a happy medium?
That's a fantastic question. And I think a lot of it comes down to just general respect amongst all three, the PH, the client, and the outfitter. With social media nowadays, with WhatsApp, with everyone having a cell phone, it's easy for guys to talk. And as an outfitter, I want my PH to have a good experience with the client. I want them to have that bond. If 6 months down the line, they end up chatting to each other and they go off and do their own thing, there's nothing I can do about that. It is what it is. I just have to be understanding that maybe that client just wants that PH to go to a different area, and that's all that it is. I think this notion of the client belongs to the outfitter is still a very old way of doing things. Back in the days before websites and Facebook and everything, that's how it was. You just went and hunted with the same guy. And if you were doing a real good job, the clients will keep coming back with you. They will. Or at the very least, they may send you a cool email and be like, listen, had a great time, but I just want to go and hunt in Limpopo. Now, I had no one in Limpopo. I had no connections, but I would have been like, okay, cool. Just make sure you take the PH because he'll look after you, trust me, type of thing. So I think it's mutual respect on both sides. What the difficult side that comes in is when you start throwing landowners in there. That's probably one side where I don't think they should be getting involved at all. You guys know often outfitters will go to different concessions, and I've seen landowners contacting clients and saying, listen, next time you come back, come straight to me, I'll give you these at discounted prices. That, I believe, is a bit on the dark side. But in terms of a PH with a client, it is what it is. And if anything, if that PH has done that good of a job that the client likes him that much, well done, man. You did good. Pat on the back. Especially with freelance PHs now. With freelance PHs becoming such a big thing, COVID was huge. It put a lot of people in financial problems that outfitters had to release their PHs. They're like, I can't pay for you anymore. So they had no choice but to become freelance PHs. So if they got a couple of clients out of it, wish you all the best. Glad you're making money. Feed your family, type of thing.
Yeah, and I kind of where I was going with that. I have a PH that I've hunted with. It feels like an eternity now. 10 years younger than I am, but he and I hit it off instantly. It started with probably the worst experience I could ever have. Getting over there, was supposed to have a PH that I'd used before. He lied to me about it. He went with another group of hunters because they thought there was better tips involved. And all of a sudden I'm having lunch at a lodge with two South African young chaps. And you're like, then they're just talking back and forth and like, yeah, hey, so, when's so-and-so going to be here? Like, he's like, why? Like, well, because he's my PH. He's like, no, sir, I'm your PH. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And in the intern, like my wife knew his wife and had brought clothes and shit for their kids and toys and everything. And so I was pissed and she was pissed. But what had happened, it went from a shit show into the best thing that could ever happen to me because I met Hannes that way, who's okay. My PH that I use, Hannes Vayun. Hannes and I kind of instantly just bonded on a different level. And so like now I don't hunt without Hannes, period. He started as freelance for an outfitter, hunted with him twice through that outfitter. He moved, and then I kind of moved with him. I still went back to the other outfitter because they had always been good to us as part of our trip this year. But, my loyalty now, I don't want to say loyalty, but I go where my PH goes. Like I've got this incredible bond with the PH where we don't even have to talk. Like I just know what he's going to do. He knows what he can expect out of me. And just, it makes for such an enjoyable experience. And what we've done, we've become friends. I know his mom and dad. I know his wife. I've met his aunts and his uncles. He comes over on holiday and they come over marketing and they come and stay with us in Florida. And, those are relationships that are built over years. And for me, even in places where he's not licensed. So we hunted in Natal this year. We hunted in northern Limpopo this year. He's not licensed in either of those two provinces. He still went with me, lined everything up, did everything. The year before, we hunted Namibia, and he lined everything up. He went with us. I'm going to have a different PH that's ultimately responsible for me while I'm there. but I'm still looking over my shoulder, because that guy, my guy, he's not going to bullshit me. He's going to give it to me straight. And that you'll never see somebody that's more excited than him when something goes right. I mean, he and I have started the Tiny 10 together, and so we've got all of them together, done everything together, and we hunted for a Sharpie this year for almost 2 weeks, and still we couldn't connect. That's the only one I've got left. And for him, as a PH, that's the only antelope in South Africa, only antelope species in South Africa that he's also not got as a professional hunter. So for me, it's finishing out my Tiny 10. For him, it's closing out the antelope thing. But
that's cool.
For me,
well, he's probably never done a Tiny 10, has he?
I'm the only one. Yeah, I mean, he's guided several species of the Tiny 10, but not all 10 of them. So I'll be the first. And with this, if we can get the Sharps next year on camera, we'll have all 10 of them on camera too. But it's just this cool relationship. Like I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, and it's unique to Africa. That doesn't happen in the States, I don't think. I mean, here, you kind of, if you go with an outfitter and you have a good time, then you'll go back to the outfitter because their guides are not professional hunters. It's not nearly the same. Yeah. Paul, what am I trying to say here? You've been to both.
Connection. And actually, I was listening to one of your other Spotify's. You were talking about PHs and them going out there and having, and kind of circle back around the difference between AI and the fireside chats. Your PHs being able to sit down and share what you talk about, Sean, the experiences, right? It's all one big conglomeration, right? It's the experience of the hunt. It's a fireside chat about what went right that day, what went that right. How does your PH do? What do they know about you? What do you know about them? That human bonding behind the whole hunting thing that, we've brought up a few times this podcast, and you mentioned a couple years ago, that connection that lasts a lifetime and part of the memories, like if I talk about AK and Rigby, his dog, and Lucas, his tracker, and I'll remember those names forever, and that experience about fireside and stuff like that. So I guess the long way is that's the difference, is that actual connection that you'll have forever versus a stateside guy that I feel you really are a number. And that was the only ones I've dealt with. Maybe there's other ones that are better, but I just felt like I was the number next kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Look, when I was a youngster starting out, I mean, my first 1 or 2 clients ever as a PH, I was shitting myself. I was so nervous. I was just trying to focus on this. I had the outfitter telling me we had to shoot X amount of animals. I didn't understand the whole bigger picture of things. And those first couple of clients that I had, I've never heard from them again because they probably went back and were like, wasn't the greatest. Only after I got my years of experience and started to understand each client that I realized what was it all about, that putting that trigger is a fraction of a second of the trip. It's the whole bigger things of like, can I carry your bags in? Or, don't forget your boots, this type of thing. It's the small things. Can I get you a cup of coffee in the morning? Those are the things that really make a big difference. And since moving to Texas, I've had some really good clients that I'd say are good friends now that have messaged me and been like, I'm not going back to South Africa until you're ready to go back with me. Like, I'm not going to go there. And I tell them, I don't know how long I'm going to be in Texas. I've got to wait for a green card. It might be 3 or 4 years. And they say, I don't care. Like, when we go back, I want to go here and there, and I want you to come with me. And I'm absolutely flattered. Don't get me wrong. But that was something that we built up a long, long relationship over. And it's funny, but a lot of the younger guys don't realize is that when I built up those relationships, most of the times they built up because I fucked up. I made a big mistake. Maybe I got them to shoot the wrong animal, or I forgot to have spare bullets or something stupid, but I admitted I was wrong. And that kind of shows that level to the client. They're like, all right, he's a good guy. Like, if he screws up, he admits it's wrong, but then I'll work my ass off on the next animal. And it's something you have to build. Just because you're a PH doesn't mean everyone's going to like you. You still got to put in the effort, and you have to build those relationships. And if you do, the clients they'll stay faithful and loyal to you, and hence they'll go where you go. And I think that's very, very important. And every outfitter should want their PH to be like that, because you see at the shows, they bring their PHs. If they're scared about the PHs stealing them, then why bring them to the shows? Because the PH becomes the face of the company, actually. And that's just the way that it is. There's no denying it. So I think the PH plays a very, very big role. And I still believe that in South Africa's setup at the moment, they're churning out far too many young PHs. They need to have some sort of apprenticeship program. You need to spend 2-3 years shadowing guys, looking around and learning how it works. And and give the clients a bit of shit. Talk smack around the fire, tease the guys, have a bit of fun, ask them about their families, ask them what they like, what they don't do. It doesn't all have to be about hunting. It's just a couple of guys that want to enjoy their trip. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If you, especially if you find that pH where, yeah, you're on a hunting safari, right, for lack of a better word. But if it's more about the experience than that trigger squeeze, like we talk about, it's fleeting, it's microseconds, then that's where you really. And if you can, I'll get to the airport and the first thing he'll do is talk shit about, like, he'll tell a joke to my friends about me, people that he's never met before, and kind of stir shit that way. And like, it's perfect though. Because I'm going to do the same thing to him. Right. And that's just the way it should be. And I think it helps build that bond. And there's the trust that's built that way too. He sees things, he does this for a living, right? He's out in the bush, at least half the year, 25, 27 weeks a year, he's out there doing it. He knows these animals, he knows this terrain. Don't fucking second guess your pH. If he tells you to do something, just do it. And like I said, it may not, if it's your first trip, you may get a handle on that by the end of it. But certainly by the end of your second trip, you figured out how important it is to trust that guy that's been doing it, could be for decades, and it could be, decades on those same properties too. They know it better than the farmer does themselves, kind of thing. And, that's super important. But what else did we have? Let me check my list real quick.
Well, just to add a little bit onto what you were saying there, and I'm sure you guys noticed this too, but what's starting to happen now is that guys are getting to know the trackers and the skinners. And unfortunately, my tracker passed away recently, Elvis, but he was like, I was heartbroken. He was such an incredible guy, but he was my right-hand man. Like, people would come over on their second or third trips and bring Elvis gifts and bring his kids clothes. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second here. But so they were developing a relationship with those guys, which is incredible. And they're learning the trackers and the skinners and getting involved in it. And it's amazing. Again, it shows the power of hunting will eventually reach out to those who need it. And I love that type of stuff. That's how it should be.
Well, and that's what I tell people. People don't understand. I talk about the pH, and a lot of what we talk about and how hard they work. There's also some people behind the scenes that work their ass off. And, your trackers, your skinners, the housekeepers, the kitchen staff, there's all these parts and pieces in this moving cog to make it work efficiently and those people don't get enough credit. Especially, like I've bonded with my trackers too, right? So I've got Unati, who's been now for 10-ish safaris with me, who's, Hannes's PH, which is actually a cool story. Unati's family grew up on Hannes's parents' farm. They've always worked there. They've lived there for like 3 generations now. Hannes and Unati grew up together, went to school together, grew up shooting, they were, shooting Dossie together and stuff like that when they were kids. So they'd serve with a pellet gun and then a tutu and then on. But they built this, they have this bond together, right, as like friends and family. And then it transfers over to the hunting world. And just like I never second guess Hannes, Unati doesn't either. They have this kind of unspoken relationship. But he's become like a friend, though. The problem with my Afrikaans is good enough where I can speak to him just a little bit, but his primary language is Xhosa. And I can't speak Xhosa worth a shit. I can't make my tongue make those clicky sounds at all. Can't do it. But and it's cool.
Yeah, and I think again, a lot of the guys, they come over and they might get a little bit offended when the PH is speaking Xhosa and Afrikaans to their trackers, and they think they're skinnering about that. It's not the case. It just makes it so much easier in terms of communication. But I'm noticing that it's good to see that there's a lot more black PHs coming through, which I think the industry really needs. That's important. A lot of the trackers are coming through the ranks. They're getting to be licensed professional hunters, which is fantastic to see. Places like Zimbabwe and Zambia that I believe are years ahead of us. They've already brought that type of stuff in. And that just strengthens the hunting community, because one of the biggest tools that I think we have against all the anti-hunters is that if ever they throw shit at us, we can always say, look at literally what's happening to the meat. Look at the villages. Look at the small communities they're benefiting. If you want to take hunting away from me, let's say if they close down Kingsview Safaris, cool, I'll go be a cattle farmer. Or I'm smart enough, I can do a degree and go end up in finance somewhere. I don't care. But the 5 families that I've employed for the tracking and skinning, they have no income now. They're done for. And I think it's nice to start to see that all of those types of people are coming through, and it's just going to benefit and strengthen it the long way. And again, it just shows the strength of the dollar. You give someone a $100 tip. All of a sudden, for the next 2-3 months, his kids have got uniforms, they got food, they got new clothes. It's massive for that guy.
Yeah, we released and you're right, 100%. And I could see, every year it gets a little better too. With Unati, when we first started hunting with Hannes and Unati, his clothes weren't in great repair. His boots were older. There was holes in them, and he didn't have a proper rain jacket. But as Hannes got successful, with return clients and Unati started doing a lot more hunting, now he's got proper gear and people are bringing him everything. And so now, there's all these other people other than me that also, they're friends with Hannes and Nadi, and they bring him stuff. So I don't have to bring boots and jackets and stuff like that anymore to help out. What I do is bring like outdoor edge knife blades inserts. I buy them by the case because he loves those things, and it's awesome. So that's the kind of thing that I do. And obviously, we tip accordingly too. And I think, you have a tendency as a hunter, especially if you have that relationship, to tip a little better if it means something, that's your friends, that's your family, those are your people, they're going to take care of it. You're going to tip better too. And that's another thing that's not talked about a lot in the industry is tipping, which we actually put a video out about it, and we caught a lot of shit about it. And not from the American side. We also caught a lot of shit from the South African side. Like, hey, I'm sorry, other way around. We caught shit from the Americans about it and the English about it, but all of the South African PHs were like, hey man, I'm glad you did that. Finally, nobody ever wants to talk about it and you weren't afraid to do it. But I just finally learned how cheap some of these bastards are that go over there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can drop, I did the math, and, on the low side, I think I figured for a 7-day safari, all in between your tracker, your PH, house staff, and I itemized everything. It was like $1,300 or something, right? So on a 7-day safari, guys going over there and shooting $12,000 worth of animals. And this cheap fucker on Facebook is saying, oh, that's too much. You're spending $700 too much over the course of that week. It should only be $50 a day for that and $10 a day for this. You cheap motherfucker. That's less than 10% of your safari. Standard in the States is 20% for a tip. You're leaving less than that, and it goes a lot further over there, and you're not willing to pay that. You'll shit a check for $12,000, no problem. But by God, you won't give your PH and tracker a tip that they fucking deserve.
Yeah, listen, the tipping culture in the States is fucking mind-blowing. Like, it's crazy. Honestly, it's really something we've had to get used to here. It's for everything. I think I got a haircut the other day, and there was like 6 different options for a tip. Right. I was like, lady, you just cut my hair. Like, that's it. Tipping in South Africa it's there, but it's not really expected. If someone doesn't tip you, you're like, oh, that's fine. You don't even think about it. But I think you need to just be honest in conversation with your outfitter and the guys. And some people might not like to talk about it, but it actually helps. If someone came to me and said, hey, Jono, how much do I tip the guys? I can tell them. And then they know. Then there isn't this thing of like, oh, did I give them too much? Didn't I give them too much? Did I offend them? You can come to nowhere like, listen, $100 goes a long way. They'll really appreciate it. And it will. And I think that's what a lot of times people are scared of. They don't want to offend these guys because they're coming from a culture where you have to tip. Otherwise, you're going to get shunned or someone's going to shout at you. Whereas in Africa, it's like, if you give a tip, thank you very much. We truly appreciate it. That's just how it is. And more people need to speak about it.
Yeah, it's not expected, but it's appreciated. But, and that's the thing, though. I go back to, I don't think that's the case anymore. I do think, listen, I know what PHs make and I know what trackers make. I know what their day fees are. And looking over the day fees that a PH makes for the past 20 years, how much has that fee gone up in 20 years?
Yeah.
It hasn't, right? I mean, it's still right there at what they were making 2 decades ago. Now, cost of living in South Africa has gone up exponentially in that same time. Mm-hmm. Everything's more expensive. So as a way to combat that, I think they've come to expect tips, and they have to have it to survive, right? It's not that they're greedy and they just want more money. Those day fees, especially if you're a private PH, right? You're not, like you said before, there's all these PHs that have the freelance. So if you're a freelance PH, you're paying for all your petrol, you're paying for all this and that, or you get 1 tank of fuel per safari, but you're traveling, 3 hours a day kind of shit. It takes a little bit more to operate that way. And for me, a tip is not only a way to say thank you, but it's also to reward you for all the hard work and effort you put in to making my trip successful and showing me and my friends a good time. And
100%.
Yeah, and there's the whole percentage thing. It should be 10, it should be 20. I'm like, no, horseshit. Listen, at a minimum, that's why I put it out there. I researched everything. We've been several dozen times now. This is what I've come to. So at a minimum, if you could tip this, I think it's going to make everybody happy. I use the $20 a day or $20 an animal rule for a skinner or skinner. If you're stacking shit up like cordwood, you've got 15 animals in there in the salt. $20 a day ain't going to cut it. You need to up the inning, and same thing with your trackers. They're loading, they're skinning, they're doing everything. So take care of those guys. But Paul, while we're here, you've got Jono on. Is there anything you want to talk about? You got a topic that's hot to trot?
No, I mean, so we've definitely covered the gambit of stuff, I guess, yeah, John, give me a plus and a minus on this AI. Give me a plus where you think it's going to go, and give me your biggest fear where it's going to go.
I think one definite plus, because I tend to try and focus on the actual safari industry itself, and I'm still amazed by guys that put out these bad reports that they had on hunting trips. And I'm like, but how did you book with this guy? Surely you must have done a bit of research. So one of my biggest hopes is that it kind of puts the power in the client's hands, that he can use AI to really suss out the good outfitters from the bad outfitters and get the guys that are going to give him a good trip, because that's what we want ultimately. We want everyone to just have a good time, promote South African hunting industry and Africa hunting industry in total in a good light, so more people come. That's one of the good things that I hope. One of the negative things is that I think the anti-hunting fraternity and those guys, they're gonna climb all over this thing. They're gonna throw all sorts of propaganda at us, videos, bullshit. And I don't know how, but I hope there's some sort of way where you can discern which is AI generated and which is actually genuine. So that's my biggest hope. And it's going to be a fight. Either way, it's going to be a real battle on both sides.
Yeah, that was a good question, Paul. Staffen, you got anything for Jono?
Yeah, what'd you move to Texas for?
Yeah, they made me so it was actually a client that hunted with me back in South Africa, a good friend of mine. He lives here in Texas, and we were sitting around the fire one day, and he kind of said, like, would you ever consider moving to the States? And this was just after COVID, and I sort of laughed it off. And then a couple of months later, he sent me an email, and he was like, look, if you really consider moving to the States, we'd love to have you over here and help out on the ranches. His dad's got a couple of ranches, and they got a big earth moving equipment business and everything. And I was like, maybe. So we started chatting to my wife, and we started looking into it. And let me tell you something, trying to get to the States is fucking difficult. Like, it's crazy. As open as your borders are down south, to come in properly is ridiculous.
Maybe you ought to try that way, right?
So anyway,
I'm in the south fence. It's open. That gate's wide open right now.
So he sent me an email, and he was like, look, I've chatted with my dad. We'd really like you to over here and help us and everything. And I'm not going to lie, COVID, it put a big dent on us. My wife had a flower business, so she relied on weddings and conferences, and that got shut down. So it hit us hard, but we were coming back, and I've got two small kids, a daughter and a son, 6 and 7 years old. And you start to look at their future, and you think, my wife and I will be good, but what's it going to look like 20, 30 years down the line for them? So we got the process going, and the system was we had to put in for a lottery system, which means they only release 80,000 of these visas a year. It's a specialized visa. So anybody with a specialized degree or X amount of years experience can enter this lottery. And I've got a postgraduate degree in wildlife and agricultural management, so I could enter that thing. But they have a lottery, and I think it's 2.4 million people enter this lottery across all over the world. And I was extremely fortunate to get drawn a visa. So it was kind of, a message from heaven type of thing. It was like, this is what's meant for you guys. And we started the process. It was about 6 to 8 months. We managed to get over here. And I must admit, the Americans here have been incredible. They've been so welcoming. They've made us feel so welcome. Not one single person, as an immigrant, not one person has said anything derogatory. Everyone was so welcoming. How can they help? Thanks for coming over. If you need anything, it's been amazing. So to the Americans listen to this, thank you very much for making myself and my family feel welcome. We truly are. Truly
so
are
is this your first time to the States then, or have you been here before?
No, I came in 2020 on a marketing trip. Yeah, and I had a great time. And when I went back to my wife, I was like, if we ever move to America, it's got to be Texas. It's very similar to South Africa. I enjoy it.
So what is your I'll take on American, what you see compared to, well, Texas is a pretty populated state anyway. So what do you like and dislike about where you're at, and what you see there?
Well, if I could say this, every time I see somebody at the traffic lights begging, I kind of want to get out and slap them in the face and just give them a real kick up the backside and be like, you have no idea. You are in the best country in the world. The opportunities in this place is crazy. Compared to Africa and what I've seen there to here, it's beautiful. The opportunities, the way that people want to work, people support small businesses, they support entrepreneurship, especially the Texans. Yeah, I must admit, if you got a small business, they're behind you 100%. Right. It's a fantastic country. It's a country that works. I am noticing a few things, to be honest, as someone that comes from a third world country. I'm seeing some things where I'm like, I hope these guys get on top of this quickly, because it could go south, and I think November coming up is definitely one of those moments where I'm starting to think, I don't want to leave this country. It's a beautiful place.
This shit can hit the fan come November.
It can. But there's so much optimism still, especially the people down here in the south. They're very, very nice people, and like I said, so welcoming. So
that's good. That's good. And
NFL is probably the shittest sport I've ever watched, but that's coming from a rugby supporter. But we'll get around that.
I went the opposite way. I got with all my friends in South Africa, I get converted to the other side. So now I'm a huge Fox fan and watch rugby like crazy. I can't get enough of it. But all right, well, I've got a couple more quick things, and then we can wrap this up. One of the questions was, so we briefly touched on the CBL thing, and I think everybody's got their opinion on that, and that's fine, one way or the other. So long as it's done in a legal method, then I'm okay with you doing it. I'm not going to fucking do it. Period. I'm just not going to go hunt a captive bred line. I'm not going to do it. I'll go up north and do it somewhere else. It's going to cost me 10 times as much, but that's how I'm going to do it. But I'm fine with it. But that's a hot debate right now.
It is. And I think it comes down to, one of my favorite sayings is, let's call a spade a bulldozer. Like there is a place for it for a reason, because again, as you said, it's frowned upon. Not everyone is going to do it, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a spot for it. My wife, before we got married, she used to work for a big reserve. I won't say which one it is, but it was a non-hunting reserve, an amazing place, incredible amount of wildlife. And they had a very strong lion population, so strong that the lion population grew and grew and grew. And they were very anti-hunting, none whatsoever. But the only way to control the lion population was through auctions, sell the lions out there. And I think we pretty much know what ended up with those lions. But they had no other way of controlling lion populations. And there are thousands of these reserves throughout South Africa. It's actually gone to the point now where they're starting to view lions as a real pest, where they're like, what do we do with these things? They're not dying. They're interbreeding. They're killing all of our valuable game. They're taking down 4 or 5 buffalo a week, which could be, X amount of dollars type of thing. They have to be managed. And captive bred lying was one of those means of actually doing it. Now, the footage that's been released of lions in cages, letting them out, shooting them, I think is one of those propaganda tools that really got hijacked. And I think most people can disagree with those. But it kind of it focused on one small area of a larger aspect of things that worked. And the sad thing that I saw was the way that it ripped the hunting community apart. Like it just put people on either side, and that was it. There was no sticking together. There was no, okay, we hear this side, but can't you guys just rather try this? And they could say, we've tried this, but it doesn't work because of X and Y. There was no open dialogue. People weren't trying to come up with a viable solution. It was a case of, it's wrong, shut it down, cheers. So now, are you telling me without captive bred lions, the only ones we're going to hunt are the ones that are out in the wild, self-sustaining populations? Because that's what the regulation says. They got to be self-sustaining, which seems kind of counterintuitive to me. They need to be protected and monitored. Unfortunately, it's not a topic that's going to be resolved anytime soon. But I just wish the hunting industry was a little bit more mature about it in the way that they went and kind of said, forget the anti-hunting guys. They're going to shout and scream. There's nothing we're going to do about it. Let's all sit down at the table and draw up a good plan that everybody must sign and stick to. And if you don't, then we will chastise you and kick you out of this thing. Like, we'll make sure you go out of business. But if you follow these rules, that's for the better of it, and we can improve our lion herds, then let's do something that way. So I think they've kind of missed the boat on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think, I caught quite a bit of shit on that last video we did, the Captive Red Lion video, because, my take on it was, and I was very specific in the video, and people kind of glossed over it, right? I don't agree with the practice of bringing a lion in, turning it loose from a cage and putting it into a 20-hectare paddock for somebody to drive around the truck and shoot it. And that, that totally glossed over, just went over everybody's head, and they heard, oh, captive bred lions. I'm not opposed to hunting. I'm not opposed to any legal means of hunting either. I have a problem with that particular practice. And for us, controversial topics drive views, right? And I also want to get this out there. I want people to understand, yes, while this practice does go on, there's also legal practices that go on too. There's I don't know if it's 1,000 or 2,000 hectare minimum the line's got to be released on. There's also a 30-day grace window there. The line has to be on property 30 days before they can be hunted. And if all those rules are followed, I don't have a fucking problem with it at all. Go out there and hunt your lion. It doesn't mean that I want to hunt mine that way, but I will be the first person when you get back to camp to smack you on the ass and tell you a good job. But you're right.
If that's what you want to do, then do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't listen. As long as you're hunting, you are contributing to conservation. Whether you know it or not, you are contributing. Those dollars will trickle down. It's all going towards the effort. So I have no problem with it so long as it's legal. Doesn't mean it's for me. There's the put and take operations, right, that we kind of talked about. And especially for whatever reason, sable always seem to come up. You go shoot, you have a group that comes in and shoots 20 sable, and then next week you got a truckload of sable dropped off. For whatever reason, they never seem to get fucking wild either. When they've, you're ready, they're coming from breeder farms, and you let a sable out and you can spot and stalk it. It seems like every time you get 30 yards from a sable before he fucking hauls ass. There's never a wild sable. And I know that's not true. There are some that are wild as shit. Saffin chased a couple. Paul, you chased a couple that were wild as shit this year. But, that's that stigma. Listen, if I can stalk up to it with a bow and the wide ass open and it watches me coming and it never runs away, I'm not shooting that fucking animal.
And at the end of the day, you got to sit here and say to yourself, what is the definition of hunting? Right? What is the true meaning of the word hunting? Is it letting it out of a truck and sticking it in a fence and shooting it? Maybe in somebody's eye. But in my eye, that's not hunting. I want
that's killing.
Yeah, that's killing. Back in the day, when they hunted with spears, they didn't just let them out of a cage and go spear them. They hunted them. That's hunting, right? So, at the end of the day, you're going to have the people, the naysayers that, they're going to have their opinion, which is fine. The opinion's like an asshole if he's got one. So, if it tickles your fancy, do it. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job for you. If it's something that you're into, good job. But at the end of the day, you got people who don't like that kind of shit. And, just always going to have that butt heads because you're never going to agree on it. Right. So I don't know.
Well, and fortunately for me, I have a PH that's not going to let me shoot something like that either. He'll be the first one to say, no. This is we're not going to do this.
Well, no different than we were there this year. We went there and Paul and I got to witness them actually feeding the lions that were in the cages. And it's like the truck come around the corner and right there at the fence, and who wants to shoot that shit? Right. I don't.
Not me.
That's it. You feed it before you shoot it. That's not fun.
No, and like I said, it doesn't go on everywhere, but it does go on. But it's one of those topics that are super controversial. But I like John, the way you kind of explained it in that from a hunter's divide perspective. It's crazy, and this goes back to what we started on earlier. How as a group of people that are supposed to be on the same page, we can be so fucking divided. And instead, my approach to it is just like I said, I'm allowed to have my opinion. And if I post something out there on social media and you don't like it, I'm not going to yell and scream and holler at you. I'm going to engage in civil conversation. And so you can understand my side of it, and I'm going to listen to your side, and let's work it out, right? I'm not going to agree with everything you do or what Mike does or what Paul does. It doesn't mean I'm not the first person there to congratulate you when you did something, though. So long as it's helping, as a group of hunters, we're in, tumultuous waters. We're at a pivotal point in our history where these next several years could determine very much whether we're allowed to hunt and fish, and those God-given rights, that we were born into, they may not be God-given anymore. They may be government regulated until, fuck no, you can't do this anymore. So, as a group of people, we need to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder. If that guy wants to hunt, a white-tailed deer out of a 100-acre high fence, good for you. Go fucking do it. Doesn't mean I want to do it, but I'm happy for you. Post a picture, that's fine. But don't post a picture online and then get pissy when somebody gives you shit, right? You got to know it's coming. If you're doing it just to post it and gain that recognition, you're probably not hunting for the right reasons either.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. And to touch back on with a lot of the record book stuff, the guys that have got no problems with this type of stuff are the ones that are chasing the inches and they're chasing that ranking system. And I think a lot of the bigger organizations that frown upon this type of stuff and it's wrong are then having these guys do exhibits and shows and all sorts of stuff because they've paid for them to do it. And you're like, well, where are your standards really? And
why
I think
are you
with
doing
just open,
Exactly.
With just open dialogue and saying, this is what it is, or yes, you got a record with this, but it was a CBL. Classify it as that. Then everyone's like, cool, that is what it is. It was a free range one. Classify it as such there too. We need to, I was always sort of brought up through the hunting outfitter industry that you never talk smack about another outfitter. Doesn't matter how bad they are. We all know who they are. We all know what they do, but you never slander them. You never go to clients and rip them down type of stuff. But what's happening now is clients are starting to get onto social media pages and hunting forums and starting to expose these guys and saying what it is. And maybe not even a bad way. Maybe they're just putting up a hunting report and saying, oh, this type of thing happened. But what's happening is the other guys are reading it. They have been to Africa and like, cool, I don't want that. So therefore, I'm not going to go hunt with that guy. I'm going to go hunt with this guy. And it's simple. All it takes is just talking and sharing information. And eventually this type of stuff will sort itself out. I've had guys that have contacted me and been like, I want a 60-inch buffalo, for example, a massive thing. I know the neighbor next door has got one, but it's got fucking 5 ear tags in and a microchip.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, I will not do it. I could have made a whack on that, but I don't want to be associated with that. And invariably, he went to the guy that I know would have done it, shot it, and he was happy with it. So it's going to sort itself out eventually. But the last thing we need is to start finger pointing and dividing each other, because then nothing's going to come of it.
Yeah, I agree. And, that divide is going to, it drives a wedge between all the good things as hunters that we've come to enjoy and like. And, we all strive. I think inevitably, hunters in general are all good people, or they want to be good people. It's just getting everybody on the same page and realizing that you're allowed to sit next to the guy next to you, and you don't have to have the same opinion as him, but that's okay. But you can appreciate it and you can understand where he's coming from, and you can also congratulate him and help him get to that next level. And I think there needs to be more of that. And unfortunately, like I said, with AI now and social media and everything else that's coming out, you're in a weird position. You can be a hero or a zero in about 37 seconds, depending on how long it takes you to hit that share button.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah, and for us, we're in the social media business, right? So our lives are on camera now, whether we like it or not. This is kind of what we signed up for. So you got to take the good with the bad, and there's a lot of bad, but it's also good. When I can reach out to somebody like you and we can have a discussion and talk about it, and you've seen our stuff and you know what we stand for and who we are. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. And I think these are the discussions that need to be had, and that need to, contribute to foster those kind of relationships in the hunting industry, and talk about not only hunting in the States, but hunting in South Africa, and opening that up to people that may thought it was out of reach for them for whatever reason, and say, hey, no, it's not. In fact, not only is it not out of reach, but it's very attainable. And it's, in fact, it's probably less than you're spending on whitetail hunting this year, for example, which is absolutely true, because I know what we spend here at this farm is fucking astronomical.
And at the end of the day, it's okay to have these conversations. It's not, it's feedback, right? Feedback's a gift, and whether it's good or bad feedback, have a conversation about it, right? You may not like it. You may not like it, but that's okay. You're entitled to not like it.
Yeah, so we're at my farm in Kentucky right now, and the house is it flooded. So the main house is flooded, and it's being rebuilt from kind of the ground up. That's why it looks like shit everywhere behind us. And Paul's upstairs, and Staffan's out in a travel trailer because we can't stay inside. It's a pain in the ass. But one thing I can always count on, and it's so much fun, when we call it deer camp, and it's so different than going to Africa and sharing a camp with everybody.
Yeah.
As soon as these guys walk through the door, you're on a different level of ball busting. Shit's about to go down, and it's those kind of memories. Yep. We talk about Staffen killed a massive buck here 2 years ago that he chased for 3 years, and it was a booner deer that something he'll probably never get a shot at again in his life. But he worked for 3 years for that deer. We don't talk about that. We talk about the fact that he was a puss and he wouldn't go over there and look and see what he shot because he was afraid he shot the wrong fucking deer. That's what we bust his ass about.
Right.
That's the kind of cool stuff that we get as hunters. So, but yeah, Paul, you got anything else? Jonah, do you have anything for us?
No, just to touch on that, that's one of the reason why I named my podcast Round the Fire, because that's what it is. It's sitting around the fire, it's sharing stories, it's pulling each other's legs, it's teasing someone, it's showing admiration. Exactly. It's talking. And what you guys are doing, seriously, is incredible. And I love it. Like I said before we started recording, there was only one or two sort of episodes and podcasts about Africa. There wasn't much out there. And when I came to Texas, I was actually going to stop my podcast because I was like, well, about the hunting scene, it's not really worth it anymore. And I started getting emails of guys being like, hey, I was listening to your podcast and I booked a hunting trip based on what you said. And I was like, holy shit, wow, I didn't realize it was that powerful. And you might only get like 20 downloads, but out of that one download, that guy's booked a trip or has shared information or anything. And I think that's incredible. So what you guys are doing, I really like your content, and I think keep it up. It's amazing.
And it should it should be about everything, all the hunting in general. It should, not just Africa, not just whitetail hunting. There's all kinds of hunting, right? And there's all kinds of controversy on all kinds of hunting. So
yeah, but I think the problem is, and that's something we as a company have talked about numerous times is, Mike is a very staunch supporter of the fact that he thinks we need to do more North American game. But for me, I'm a big Africa guy, and I want to go hunt in Argentina. And for me, it's just, listen, once you go to Africa, that shit gets in your blood and you just can't not go. Like, you just want to be there constantly, kind of thing. Right. So, and the opportunity there, I spent, call it 120 sits in the tree last year, right, with a camera filming, native whitetail. And sure, we filmed plenty of whitetail, and I filmed plenty of bucks. Never got a kill shot on film. If I go to Africa with a film crew, guess what? I'm getting everything I need in 7 to 10 days, and then some.
Yeah.
But love and passion for that country is just crazy. But before we go, and I'm going to stop because this could get out of hand in a hurry. So we've got an upcoming, we've got something planned for next year that we can't talk about yet, but I want your take on it. So there's this, for whatever reason, in my experience, it seems like most people, when they first go to South Africa, end up in Limpopo. 90% of the people that I've talked to, or more, probably more, closer to 99 or 100%, normally start in Limpopo. They don't start in the Eastern Cape. They don't end up in the Karoo. Some may end up in the Free State as part of that first trip to Limpopo if they're chasing springbuck and stuff like that. But most people start in Limpopo. It was, and it was same for me. I hunted there several times before I ended up in the Cape. And then once I went to the Eastern Cape, I fell in love with it because not only the geographic diversity, but the biodiversity. And you're not hunting these farms that have 4 different species. There's farms that have 30 different species of game. So for me, so my question is, you're obviously from the Eastern Cape. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What province is better? Is Limpopo better, or is the Eastern Cape better? And tell me why.
You're really socking it to him, aren't you?
So
he fucking may never be able to go back.
In my humble opinion, I would honestly say Limpopo is a piece of shit. Don't even bother with it. Just go straight to the Eastern Cape. I'm joking. I think
Listen,
this
ladies
is...
and gentlemen, that was not scripted at all. I swear to God, that's just.
No, look, this is the beauty of South Africa. Now you guys can see it, is that it is such a diverse place. Limpopo is incredible. And Limpopo for a long time was the leader in South Africa. They got incredible kudu species, good buffalo. It's good, honest, hard hunting. And then you come down to the Eastern Cape, and as you say, it's diverse, lots of different species. 1 minute you're in hunting alongside the Indian Ocean, take an hour's drive and you're in the Karoo, the desert. It's amazing. So I think for those guys that tend to start out in Limpopo, that's all good. If they start out in the Eastern Cape, that's also good. But do yourself a favor and see other parts of South Africa. It really is.
Well, and actually, to be honest with you, I got to see that this year because, we traveled much more of this. We went to
Mike, you got
6 different camps.
You got to hunt in 4 different provinces this year.
Yeah, so it was like, the first year we go there, you fly into Joburg, and it's like this shithole, right? And it's like, let's get out of here. But then we actually drove through some of Joburg that I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really nice. Like, you don't get to see that kind of stuff. We went to Eastern Cape. We've been all over the place. We went to Namibia, which I thought was freaking beautiful. You know,
stunning place.
And then where did we go? Port Elizabeth. We went to when we did the splitting image, and that was a beautiful place. So there is a lot of nice places there that you don't really get to see, right? And so you can't say it's it's a shithole, and it's no different than this place. You got some really nice places, and there's shitholes, right? And there's places you don't want to go in after dark here, just like there. So it's all the same, So, but I got to see.
A great point.
We saw a lot of different places of Africa this year that I never got to experience. So, and it gives you a little bit more of an idea that there is nice places.
Well, and I think there's no difference in that. If we've got an international hunter coming to the U.S. and they go hunt, let's say Texas, for example, and then they go back and tell their people, oh yeah, well, I know what it's like. I've hunted in the U.S. This is like, no, you've hunted in Texas. That's not what the U.S. is. There's this whole other part of our country. There's another 50 plus states in there. You've only hunted one. That's not the U.S. That's not all of the United States. Just like South Africa, just because you hunt in Limpopo or just because you got in the Eastern Cape, still haven't seen it all. There's a bunch more provinces. You can't base your
opinion on one spot. You got to go see many spots for sure. Right. So,
I'm sorry. Let's do this back.
There you go.
I muted myself like an asshole. And I've only had 2 blue moons. Fuck, this is going to be a long night.
I didn't want to say anything, but I could kind of hear you a little bit.
Perfect. All right, we're back. So do any of you guys want one last shot at Jono? Any questions for him? I mean, you do have a South African on the other end of the line, so feel free to, send one.
Paul.
Next weekend we got the All Blacks, which is always a challenge. But the way we're going at the moment, oh man, I think we're going to roll them. There's no doubt about it.
Nice, yeah.
No doubt about it. Related to that topic, who the fuck decided sevens was a good idea? That's the stupidest shit ever. Who came up with that?
I don't know. That's for the guys.
That's like the JV version of it or something. It's not the real, fuck that.
That's like our backyard ball. We don't have enough players to make it for everybody, so we'll pick up sevens. So,
yeah.
That's for the guys that couldn't hack it, definitely.
Do you have any shit you want to throw towards South Africa today?
I'm good.
Perfect. Well, Jono, thanks a bunch for coming on. And I'm sure we'll be talking again in the future. But man, keep doing what you're doing, and tell all the listeners out there how can they find you? How can they listen to your podcast?
Well, the podcast is on pretty much Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I think you just search Round the Fire with Kingsview Safaris. There's quite a few podcasts that start Round the Fire, so that's why I've left it with Kingsview Safaris. I always appreciate anybody that gets in contact with me. I'm a bit old school. I'm not really social media, Facebook, Instagram. Don't bother. If you want to get a hold of me, you can send me an email, jonomchugh@gmail.com. I'm happy to help out wherever I can. But for the most part, it's the podcast. And then to you guys, what you've been doing is absolutely incredible. Thank you very much for bringing some awareness and information to hunting in Africa. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, no, we
guys.
appreciate it. Appreciate it very much for coming on and lending your opinion. And yeah, let's definitely do this again. Anytime you got, especially if you've got some controversial shit to talk about, nobody wants to talk about it.
Oh.
I know who you can call for sure.
100%, man. I'm always keen because that's what needs to be said. Got to say it. You got to say
Perfect.
it.
All right, guys. Until next time, live free, hunt hard, keep chasing that adventure.